Hey everyone, happy Easter Monday. Thanks for checking into our latest Traded Black podcast. I'm your host, Shad Dales. Going to bring on Michael Bronstein in a moment from Attached to talk about our weekly segment, including some interesting news. North Carolina, could they finally get a medical program? And also, we didn't actually touch on this too much last week, but two marijuana bills filed by Congressman Dave Joyce. Will this gain some traction? Because we know we've been down this road before. We'll see. But it is grabbing a lot of attention, especially this year with, as we know, Donald Trump back in office. So what does this mean? Let's find out. Let's welcome in Anthony Varrell here on a Monday, Easter Monday. Good to see you. How's the weekend?
It was nice. It's different having a kid with on holidays, so it kind of changes the whole dynamic
How so?
of it.
I'd love to. Everybody's got their own little
It's
take.
it's not only about you
Yeah, you think?
anymore. So I mean, and Easter's not really a holiday that we get too crazy about, but it was nice to dress her up and take some pictures, and my parents actually got to enjoy it.
Yeah,
to an extent.
She is your twin, that's for sure.
Yep.
Would you say 24 inches now? And what's she weigh?
14 pounds.
14 pounds, 2 months, 24 inches. Big, healthy baby. That's great.
Yeah.
But great to hear. And hope everybody had a great long weekend here on a Monday, Easter Monday. In Canada, I know there's a federal holiday with banks and schools and stuff closed. So I don't know how many people are logging on. In the U.S., it's just business as usual. But speaking of business, let's get into it and bring in our first topic here today in Jushi Holdings, news out of Ohio, where they opened up their fifth dispensary, Beyond Hello dispensary. It's in Mansfield, which is going to offer, as we know, in both medical and recreational cannabis. This increases now their national footprint to 41 stores, which I thought was interesting. But really what we're starting to see now among many MSOs is they're doubling down in states that they already have a strong footprint in, and why not? And gone are the days of overextending. So I think what you're seeing more and more here is know what you know and do it really, really well, which is a smart move and something that we've lived and learned through in the last couple of years, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is a good thing to see from them. I know Jim had some bullish comments on Ohio when he was on last week with us. I mean, bringing the store count to 5 in Ohio it's definitely a net positive. I know there's still a lot of opacity around the market. I mean, in terms of what is the tax going to be, when are the adult use regulations going to be really ironed out and put into place? But it's a market that's growing. It's a market that is going to be a growth driver. For some of the MSOs at least. And I mean, it's good to see them put another location within the state.
We should actually ask that to Michael. What's the latest, what he's hearing from Ohio? But what was the numbers again? Tax, but then the amount of THC, was there a cap? I forget. I don't know off the top of my head. But
no, it wasn't a THC cap, but they were trying to up the excise tax. And then they're also trying to completely nullify the adult use advertisement guidelines.
Right.
And they basically wanted to go back on everything that the people voted for via the ballot initiative, which, I mean, it's just another state potentially going against the will of the people. So, I mean, it's not that good to see. It's being fought tooth and nail. I think that they're going to have some sort of resolution that really does look a lot like what was voted on by the people, but it's yet to be ratified.
Yeah. That's wild how that happens. People vote on it and then you can retract. It's crazy.
I mean, we had a fear of that could potentially be the case in Florida. I mean, if we would have passed Amendment 3, despite Amendment 3 passing, it still needs to go through I'll call it a rulemaking process or a fine tuning. And DeSantis could have augmented the bill. He could have made it that Trulieve had to pay a $10 million fee per dispensary to bring adult use dispensaries online in the state of Florida.
Which he probably would have.
Which, sure. But I mean, if he did that, that'd be $1.4 billion.
That's a lot of money
for Kim to pay.
Market cap is just over $1 billion right now. That ain't working.
Yeah, but I mean, they can augment these bills and they can enact changes to them. Like I said, litigation, other lawmakers coming into the fold to kind of combat it. It's going to be fought tooth and nail, and I don't really think they're going to get. I don't think it's the majority that's supporting augmenting what the people voted for.
Yeah. All right, let's now move to our next news. And we talk about knowing certain areas really well and expanding. And that's just it for our next company, HITI. They opened up a new Canna Cabana location, this one in Cochrane, Alberta, which brings its total to 85 stores now in the province, which is a very strong footprint, to say the least. So again, it does appear, I should say, whether you're a US MSO or Canadian player, like there's a lot of companies that continue to expand their footprint on key markets that they understand and know best. HITI, obviously, Alberta and not Ohio, but Ontario. but this now brings it to 85. So a strong move, and really a smart one as they look to expand their retail footprint, which they're known for.
Yeah, I mean, this is good. We get about 2 or 3 of these a month, with Raj expanding the footprint
Yeah.
for high tide. Alberta is obviously a good market for them in that province. It's good to see. I'm assuming, like I said, we'll probably get a couple more of these in the next couple of weeks, that they'll just keep adding incremental retail on to the portfolio.
Yeah. And there's another story that actually was making its way online. It features their CEO, Raj Grover. He talks about how Canada, its LPs, have a competitive edge when it comes to Germany. And some of the numbers he was outlining is that Germany's medical cannabis imports jumped 272% year over year in Q4, with over 50% sourced from Canada. And saying that, when you combine Germany's surging import demand, then paired with Canada's reputation for quality cannabis, this then positions obviously Canadian LPs for some big growth. So, do you think in some ways this indirectly helps alleviate some of the pressures that these Canadian companies have regarding the ongoing excise tax and the opportunity that it presents and how they might view this?
Well, I mean, it definitely, it's smart business on their part. I mean, if I can export my flower into Germany, into Australia, circumvent that excise tax, and get a higher price, it makes complete business sense. There's absolutely no reason why I would be selling domestically versus exporting abroad if I get to skip the onerous tax and I'm getting more at the margin. It's caused the LPs to have a flight of product out of the country, which has led to, I don't want to say a shortage, but the Canadian market finally coming to
Which,
equilibrium. So you're starting to see prices stabilize, if not go up a little bit. However, if Germany starts to saturate and the EU market starts to saturate, and then flower comes back into the Canadian market, it's going to be interesting to see if supply goes up, prices start to go down again, and we start to see a negative trend develop. But I mean, you can still be exporting to Australia. There's other countries across the globe to be exporting to. The
yeah,
Canadians are leading the world right now in supplying other countries with GMP certified medical cannabis.
I think that's the trend that we have learned more than anything. Like you even highlighted, like think about Aurora Cannabis. Is this a company that we even talked about 12 months ago and where their
Yeah,
fate was? And now when we talk about, and I highlighted this off camera with you last week about these elite operators, middle of the packs, and then ones that are in trouble type cannabis companies. You were saying to me that you'd be willing to argue that Aurora Cannabis now belongs in those top elite operator type brackets within the overall cannabis industry. And it's a breath of fresh air to see obviously the Canadian market and some of the companies that are still around actually starting to carry the storylines in this industry right now based on the international market it presents. But it's gone complete 180. But let's not get ahead of ourselves if in the event there is some reform in the US. But right now, as it stands, it's been a good turnaround story for some Canadian companies.
yeah, and I mean the trend is changing. I know we saw the incremental licenses that were granted in Germany to bring online domestic production. I think there were five that were issued. Aurora and Tilray were the recipients on the Canadian LP side. But yeah, I mean, Aurora is doing well globally. They're exporting into tons of the EU. They're exporting into Australia, which just hit 1 million medical patients and growing. Um, Aurora's one of the best names if you're looking for a
Yeah.
global cannabis opportunity, um, as far as investability.
And just so everybody's out there, we're not biased. We talk about Aurora. We talk about Organigram. We talk about SNDL. We talk about High Tide. We talk about Tilray. And we also talk about Canopy Growth. Luc Mongeau, their new CEO, is coming on later this week. And that video actually is going to be posted on Thursday of this week. So hope everybody understands that, reads and listens to this show, and leaves some comments below that letting you all know that, yes, indeed, we're covering as many story angles in the Canadian market, US as well, as we
Yeah.
possibly can, with a open mind and a level playing field to educate you on the best industry news, developments, and thought leaders. And speaking of thought leaders, let's now segue into segment number 2. It's now time for Insider's Edge here on Trade to Black. All right, Monday. Here we are. Let's welcome in Michael Bronstein for the American Trade Association for Cannabis and Hemp. Good to see you, sir. You were on vacation last week. Where were you off to?
I went to Florida.
Nice.
So I
Nice.
was just across Alligator Alley from Anthony. So if you heard some extra chewing, it was from the feeding that was going on in
Are
between.
Nice.
you
You're
okay?
over in
Are you
Naples.
okay?
I'm fine. It's what was fed to the alligators. It's not
Ooh.
okay.
Oh man. Where's my money, man? Where's my money? Uh, exactly right. Well, that's fun, and I'm sure it's kind of toasty down in Florida this time of year. I did check the weather last week; it was high 80s all
Weather's
week.
the weather's been amazing though. There's been
That's
no
it.
humidity yet. Yeah, the weather on the West Coast is probably better than it is over here
Yeah.
right
That
now.
was some of the best weather that I've had in Florida in quite some time. I mean, it was
Yeah,
clear, clear skies, 80 degrees, cool in the morning. I mean, nothing not to like. I mean, I can see why you're down there at least this month.
yeah,
So
yeah.
we met an old friend of yours last week, Eric Knutson, Keith Brands.
Absolutely.
What a great guy. But he seems to be well entrenched with what's going on down in Texas. And I don't know how much you've been paying attention while you're on vacation, but there's a couple of things we want to talk about. Some of the stuff out of North Carolina, too. And then these two marijuana bills that were filed by Congressman Dave Joyce last week. But first, what are you seeing, hearing related to Texas? We actually had Jim Higdon on last week, Anthony, and that was a great interview just to get his take
Yeah.
on a number of things. And he's all for regulating, the hemp market, but also making sure that we don't swing in the other direction too much. But what's your take on it all? And what are you seeing and hearing from a lot of your members from both sides of the aisle, which is both cannabis and hemp right now?
Seeing a lot of swing in Texas. I don't think anybody really knows where the plane is going to land
Yeah.
necessarily in Texas. There are a lot of things that they can do that will have huge impact on the market. Obviously, there's been discussion around beverage. And there's been discussion about where distribution can be around that. There's been discussion everything from total bans
Yeah.
all the way to medical marijuana expansion in the state. And I think that they're probably going to land, in my view, they're probably going to land on something that, even if it is more quote unquote liberal than it is right now, it's still going to be a fairly conservative solution, because you don't move from wanting to do something that is sort of on the far side of it, getting all the way over to the other side of it in
Yeah.
this. So I think that some of the restrictions that we've seen talked about for a while, people don't like the idea that they're certainly around synthetic intoxicants, and which we've heard. And Anthony,
Yeah.
you mentioned this. You said that the conversation that's playing out right now is a microcosm of what is playing out across the country.
Yeah.
And in Texas, and a conversation that needs to be had. And in Texas, the thing is that I think that legislators are only starting to understand just how far that market went, and also what that market really is.
Yeah.
So when they grapple with it, the issue that we have is that the public is a lot further along. And I heard you talking a little bit about, Ohio and Florida earlier. Okay, the public is much further along than the elected officials. And I've said this here before, these elected officials at the state level are a lagging indicator as to where the actual public is on a
Yeah.
number of these issues. We're having to go in and explain to them things about the product that really are incredible relative to what it is. It's almost like, walking in and it's like, having to explain to your parents like how to use a Mac or something, like back in the day, right? Like there's just a disconnect there's a lot of times a generational disconnect.
Big time.
Why?
It's
So why do you think that is though? Because these lawmakers, obviously, you would think that they're engaging in their communities, and in Texas, the industry is so big and so widespread that it's almost as if they have their head in the sand if they don't understand what's going on. Like in Florida right now, you can just go if I go to Publix or if I drive to Whole Foods that's cross town, I'm going to pass 8 smoke shops that say CBD, Delta 8, HHC, come in and buy, no medical card required. If I'm a politician and that's my district, unless I'm just have blinders on, like there's no way not to get exposed to this. How big it is in Florida and Texas, especially.
It's interesting. Only until you kind of point it out to people do they see it, right? They're like, well, where is this stuff? And it's like, what do you mean, where is this
Everywhere.
stuff? It's everywhere. Yeah. Like walk outside the building and to the right and to the left, and then like on your way home. I mean, I've had to explain that to folks in a lot of different legislatures because it's like to us, like we're kind of looking for it, right? But you don't have to look that far to find it. You know, and the thing is like, we know what those products are. If you don't know what those products are and you just see like CBD or CBD plus or like whatever it is that you're seeing in the window, you're not thinking about it, right? Yeah. Like, I don't know. Do you buy lottery tickets? I don't. Where do you go buy a lottery ticket? Well, now if I start paying attention as to where lotto tickets are sold, I have a pretty good idea of like where those things, you know, of like where these things are. So it's sort of like you have to orient people to the fact that it's going on. And then once they see it, like they can't unsee it.
Well, that's what I was going to bring up is whether you agree, disagree with what they're proposing in Texas, one thing you have to take away is the stance that the state government announced pertaining to this industry grabbed a lot of people's attention. And I think that's a good thing because now it seems to be on the radar. A lot of people are talking about this, not just amongst us, but even outside of the cannabis industry. We had Jim Higdon on last week, and it was wild to think how many people from Washington were totally uninformed about this. Surprise, surprise. What was the one senator he was talking to? He said, you don't sell them deltas, do you? Them deltas? He was saying.
I forget who it is. But do you think, Michael, that we get medical program expansion in Texas regardless if HB 28 or SB 3 passes or gets declined, that they have finally come to the assumption that they need to expand the legal access to cannabinoids in the state of Texas?
Sure seems like people agree on that on that idea. Now, whether they can get to it politically is another thing entirely. But I think that folks, you know, from an access standpoint, and a lot of folks were very uncomfortable with the idea that people would show up at a smoke shop and that would be how they were getting, you know, how they were getting medicine, right? Because that was not something that they anticipated in the program. And the other thing is that we heard people talking the types of things that they were talking about in terms of medicine. When you're talking about product purity, right, and what's going to a patient, these are things that a lot of people had concerns about. I think irrespective of where you see this issue, we cannot be selling medical cannabis patients products that don't meet the quality of a medical standard, and certainly not ones that could be hurting them. So the thing that we worry about is that folks are showing up and they're getting products that are synthetic products and they don't necessarily know what's in them. And they think that they're like, it's a natural THC product. That's the thing that we're constantly concerned about. Oh, yeah. And that's obviously happening because there isn't enough access in Texas. And it's really hard to hear these stories because we're all medical marijuana advocates. And we want people to have access to medicine. But the reality is that people need access to good medicine right now, if that's what they're using it for. So we got to be very vigilant and diligent about how we carry this out.
Look, we look at this industry and it's changing, and it's always changing in a fast kind of way. Did you see the news last week about Curaleaf launching basically their own, what's the proper term? Is it smoke shop, Anthony? If I'm
no, they retrofitted a medical dispensary into a hemp shop.
So, do you anticipate more of that happening within the industry based on, again, you represent both industries, but do you see that trend happening? What does that mean then for, I guess, cannabis in our audience, cannabis investors, when they look at some of these specific companies that could be entertaining this idea that Curaleaf just announced?
I think that some folks have absolutely looked at it. They're talking about it internally, but I see it, I see it kind of, if you're looking at kind of state regulated cannabis companies, they're in my view, I think that there's still an idea that if they're looking at individual products or they're looking more specifically about how like a beverage or something like that is going to come to market, that to me seems a little bit more where folks are looking in terms of that space, as opposed to sort of, all right, well, let's trial balloon what a full-on store would look like. And look, there are large questions about like distribution of these products to begin with, and I don't think that they're meeting the regulatory moment per se. In that, I think you could make an argument in states that we're seeing just as much pulling back of where some of these more liberalized, for lack of a better term, hemp regulations are in these states. We've seen a lot of these things get pulled back, right? Tennessee, we saw that some of the stuff pulled back, right? The THCA flower, issue that we've seen on that. That these things are really, really murky. And then the farm bill on top of it.
Very.
Okay? So I think that, like, to an investor, it's hard because we're still in a situation. So say we argued that the farm bill made absolutely everything compliant, it was fully regulated, right? Say we took that side of the issue. Okay, well, how come under the Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Act, I can't still add this into a food, into a beverage, into a right? So it's like you're still dealing with sort of that gray area. And there may be some people who are comfortable in operating in that gray area, but I think there are a lot of folks who are reading the tea leaves, who are kind of sitting on the edge of industry, and they're waiting to see how it plays out. Right? Like, I think alcohol, for example, and the alcohol companies that I talk to, they want to see the product, but they want a lot more regulatory certainty before they step into this. Okay. And distributors and people who are making brands, they think differently about what should be going on right now. So I would say that there isn't sort of the narrative that I'm hearing here, and I followed the alcohol industry for a while, is I don't think it's this uniform narrative that is sort of being pitched in the press right now. I think it's a lot more nuanced.
All right. Well, there's no sense speculating because we don't know, but I just thought that into that story last week wrote Cureleaf, it's just like, that's an interesting one. And could we see more companies pertaining to it? But regardless, it opened up a lot of people's eyes, that's for sure. But when do you think this farm bill will get addressed, timeline wise? Any idea?
The address of the farm bill, they're trying to do a farm bill this year. Folks have said, all right, we're going to try to do it, in the summer months. Folks have been skeptical about whether they could get a deal together in the summer months, but it's not the only place where they could address this, right? Yeah. We're talking about the farm bill. There are other bills that could be used to address this issue, and that might happen. So that's kind of the thing that we're watching and we're keeping really close to, from a DC perspective, but also at the state level perspective, because in my view, whatever happens at the federal level, the thing that states are asking for is to make sure that the Fed doesn't get in the way of what it is that states are doing, right? So what does that mean? It means that a state could create an entire regulatory program, okay, that essentially models some level of legalization, right? Or they can ban it outright, because a state under the same power, if you're going to protect the power of a state to legalize, then the issue is that a state also has the choice to not legalize, right? We prefer that everybody legalize, right? But if it's the same power and a state has the ability to choose, then they have the ability to choose that. So, and I think that's where folks at the federal level are comfortable with. They're comfortable in states making their own decisions.
Well, that brings me to my next story then, and question that I wanted to ask you. So this bill that was reintroduced by Congressman Dave Joyce and Congresswoman Dina Titus out of Nevada last week, it reintroduces the state's 2.0 Act, which would end federal cannabis prohibition for legal states, enable interstate commerce, and exempt cannabis business from 280E. So to your point, could this actually gain some traction here? Because this is interesting.
That to me is where we should have been all on. Okay. What makes more sense than the States Act, given the current landscape of where all different states are, but also the political and pragmatic reality of where Congress is as well too. Okay, when we were first starting talk about the States Act a number of years ago, and we had Democrats and Republicans coming together around the States Act because the only thing they agreed upon was that states should be able to make their own informed decisions about this, and that the federal government shouldn't punish states for states for doing this, and that there'd be some level of federal involvement in states that want to have that level of federal involvement. It's the only thing right now. Everything else, so any other legalization bill, in my view, and look, podcast land, it knows no time. All right. So this statement could be true 5 years from now. It could be wrong tomorrow. All right. But what I would say about this is that people will agree to let states do what it is that they want. And the level of federal involvement now is needed. And any other piece of legislation that they put would essentially be reinventing what states have already done. Yeah. And that creates a huge amount of problem for states. It creates a huge amount of problem for markets. Okay. If we were to go in, a lot of the bills that have been written, which are just straight legalization bills, the problem is they don't consider the fact that we already have a market. It's like they're written with the idea that nothing has happened prior to this. Okay. That's not the world we live in right now. So let's legislate the world that we actually live in. Give us legalization with the way that we've done it, and give us the federal assets that we need to be able to execute from a public health and safety standpoint, from a taxation standpoint, and get out of the way.
Is this the bridge like between the two gaps, do you guys think, Anthony? Like, you got one state, let's say, passes this bill and it operates like it's federally legalized, and then the very next state over doesn't even have a cannabis program. Like, that to me is wild. But
that's fine.
I know
that's wild, but that's fine.
I'm not saying I disagree with it, but it's just, do you think that's kind of the gap where it starts to really bridge, federal reform from Washington outside of the States Act? Or do you think it's just, this is the step we need to go? You guys handle it, meaning people from Washington are communicating this on the states level, and we want nothing to do with this?
Well, they'll have something to do with it. I mean, it implies federal reform. The States Act implies federal reform for states that have legalized cannabis.
Okay.
If a state wants to have an adult use cannabis program, let them have an adult use cannabis. They're going to have adult use cannabis programs. Just look, we got plenty of them already in the United States. If a state wants medical that's onerous, like let's say Georgia or Texas, that's limited, and the people vote on it, the people have voted on it. Let them implement it. But we need some sort of federal guidance.
Right.
All of the things that we have at the state level right now are convoluted, and there's so much uncertainty around them because there is zero guidance from Washington.
So when
the States Act does that.
Give me some examples then, guys. It's on the states level where you would have federal guidance, like so people understand that, yes.
280E being rescinded.
Okay, 280E being rescinded. Okay.
Cannabis dropped from the CSA.
Yeah.
Dropping cannabis from the CSA is all the federal guidance you need to then reinforce the notion that the states are acting on from a legal standpoint. There's no more gray area.
The FDA would be deciding under the States Act, so it basically would put products through alcohol, tobacco, so TTB, right? Well, under a memorandum of understanding with FDA, which, by the way, is the thing that Attach has argued for, I don't know, at least 10 years. Okay. And what it would do is also it would have FDA classify marijuana products as they fall into specific categories. So we're not going to fall into a situation where we have people that are selling hemp right now, calling it, and they're like, hey, we're selling this. This was through the agriculture bill. It was industrial hemp. Okay. And now I can make all these products out of it. The right category will be there, right? Like as a drug, a food dietary supplement, right? Like, what do these things fall in? What do these things fall into? You're gonna have that. And then the other thing is that you'll have an age limit that's set, at a federal level.
Yeah.
And then, you look at things like federal resources that we need in terms of traffic studies, okay, in terms of, levels of intoxication, financial issues, right? There's all types of things that we have problems with without the faith, I suppose, of the federal government being involved in this, that we can solve those issues, not to mention all of the criminal justice issues that have gone on that are probably, the thing that is the most important to folks, to folks that are dealing with this on the ground. So I think that there's a huge benefit in that. And if you're going to have the federal government involved, don't have them kick over a system that we already have them integrate and have us integrate into that system too. To me, the States Act is an overlay and an important one.
Well, one thing's for sure, you can tell Congressman Joyce, who reintroduced and filed this bill, has been paying close attention to this hemp side of the business, because this, in some ways, indirectly, kind of, I don't want to say answers, but there's a lot of things that are similar as to what's going on in the hemp industry. And it's like, yes, there needs to be regulation. We don't want to cut the hemp industry off by its knees. But we've often had people in the cannabis industry talk about elevating the opportunities and some legalities framework around the industry itself. And when I think of a bill like this that could be reintroduced, gain some traction, we possibly could see some new opportunities for the cannabis space when it comes to, like you said, 280E going away and other opportunities to generate actual revenue versus, I don't even know if I'm getting my point across correctly, but the idea is just like, not to suppress hemp the same way cannabis is, only enhance cannabis, the same opportunities that the hemp industry has. And this bill in some ways could be some of those answers to some of those questions.
Look, USDA could be publishing reports on this. We're seeing that in hemp, where, they're tracking acreage, they're tracking, output. Okay. These are things that we should really be having we should be having right now. There's a lot of information that we don't have, right? Mm-hmm. And I'll just say, like, they're tracking stuff, and that, it's like, well, what is smokable hemp, right? What is that? Yeah. Okay, like, we all know what that is. Okay? Yeah, we all know what that is. So we need to get rid of. I think we need to get rid of that level of distinction. Federal government would be I'm not saying like, federal government has the answer to everything, but the reality is a lot of the messiness that we see in the market is because of federal inaction. My litmus test for a bill at the federal level is the day the bill passes, okay, and implementation happens. Did things get better for the industry and the U.S.? Yeah. Or does it get worse? And my answer to that is, it's got to be better. Okay. Right. Things have to be better.
Right. Well, let's make it better. And by getting it better, it's people need to reach out to you. If you're a company in any state in the cannabis or hemp industry, how do they get a hold of you?
info@attach.org. Hit us on our socials. You can get us. And also attach.org is the website. So feel free to find us, drop us a line, and we're here to help.
What do you think is the most important question or most frequent question you get when people call that actually become, I don't want to say client, but they eventually work with you? What is the number one concern or question you hear time and time again?
People want to know, I think people really want to know from a policy perspective what it is that we're making a difference at the federal and the state level, and if we will be protecting the interests of the business in a coordinated fashion.
Gotcha.
From an industry perspective. And I think that those are the things that people care about the most. And the thing that I've noticed from industry, and when people come into the fold, well, firstly, when people come into the fold, they never leave, right? Yeah. But which is great. We have an incredible retention rate. But one of the things that I've also noticed too is that people really need to feel like they're stood up for on this, because the market is so tough right now that they just don't even feel like they have that helping hand. And that's really what we're here to do. We're here to make sure that this industry thrives. that there's a level of leadership here, and that there's a level of sophistication and advocacy that folks aren't able to find elsewhere. And that's what we bring to the table.
Yeah, and I learned that when we were in Vegas last year. The room that was filled and the way you commanded kind of attention and direction, it was very impressive to see. And I know that you're building quite the name. It's pretty amazing what you've built in 10 years. But love doing these segments. People provide some great feedback. Always love checking in with you. So have a great week, and we'll see you next Monday, okay?
Great to see you guys.
All right. Thanks, Michael. Appreciate it. Guy knows his stuff, that's for sure. Yeah. But I was trying to get my point across there. I didn't know where I was going, but you understood what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
He's like, yep, I'll just say yeah. Was probably a comment that lasted about 2 minutes too long. But one thing I also wanted to say too, there was some news, and it wasn't great for the industry, but I got a lot of respect for the team. It's the people over at the Green Market Report got some news that over the past weekend that their business is shutting down. And that's just a given landscape of what the cannabis industry is right now. But this is why we need reform. And I know we're trying hard every single day, Anthony and I, to bring you guys content, but there is some stuff behind the scenes that's beyond our control. And there needs to be, let's just face it, more money being allocated in this industry. And with that, we need reform. And that's the importance of it all. But Deborah Borchardt, she started that company, I don't know how many years ago, but she got a great editorial team. I know some of the stories and topics that we would discuss, we would get some great ideas. But if anyone is from that group listening, I just wanted to say we appreciate all the work that you guys have done on behalf of the industry, and we wish you nothing but the best moving forward. I'm not sure if you want to add anything to that, Anthony.
No, I think that was well said. I mean, I've known Deborah since inception of GMR. I think she started it in 2017 or 2018.
Yeah.
Back in the day. I mean, they had a good run. It's tough to see it go, but I mean, they were owned by their parent company, Cranes, and when you're owned by a parent company, shit happens. Unfortunately, that potentially is out of your control. It's all about the bottom line.
Yeah, that's for sure. I saw it time and time again when I was in legacy media, and I still see that. There's a lot of big media properties that, you think you see change now, wait a couple of years here. And everything that you see in legacy media is going to get turned upside down. It already is, but it's going to go in a hurry. Kind of like with AI, you knew it was coming. And then probably in the last 12 months, it's just full front and center in our lifestyles. And it's only going to enhance even more and more and more. But world's changing quick, is it not?
Yeah, very much so. I look forward to getting my Tesla robot in a year or so.
How's that going to go?
I'll be cleaning my house all the time.
Are you seriously going to get a Tesla robot?
Oh, yeah.
How's that work?
You buy it, and they ship it to your house. And then it's a humanoid.
So it actually would clean your house?
Do whatever I tell it to do.
That's wild.
I don't know how they're ready to ship. I think late 2027.
What do they cost?
$30,000.
Man, those are going to be wild. That's coming for sure.
Yeah, if I could get instead of a live-in maid, I just have an Android that cleans my house and does everything all over.
24/7.
Yeah, I pay a live-in more than $30,000 a year. Pays for itself in year one.
Oh, we're gonna have to do a podcast one day at your house in the future. All right, my friend. Good stuff here today. I hope everybody had a great Easter Monday and a great long weekend. What do we got teed up for later this week? Like as I said, Luc Mongeau is going to be on tomorrow. We're going to post that on Thursday at Canopy Growth. Big Mike from Advanced Nutrients is going to be on with us later this week too. That'll be a fascinating interview because guy knows a lot of stuff behind the scenes and a lot of history within the industry. I want to get his take on the whole hemp side of this, what he sees, what's going on in Texas, and what could actually be rectified and done. And I'm trying to think if there's anyone else we got for this Friday, but we got some decent sized guests.
Yeah, Friday, I'm not sure.
Working on a panel too. There's a couple members from Village Farms and a couple other people that were extremely intelligent speakers on a panel when we were in Washington pertaining to the European market and more importantly, the Dutch market. I know a few of you have reached out to say, what's going on with Village Farms? When's the next time you're going to have Michael on? We've reached out. We'll probably have him on next month regarding earnings. We were hoping to have him on last month with earnings, but schedules did not align. But what we're going to do in the meantime is just really educate people on the market as a whole, which is the Netherlands, and talk about that Dutch market and really indirectly the opportunities that it could present and is presenting for Village Farms. So that's going to be coming up later this week as well. But in the meantime, I hope everybody has a great rest of their afternoon, and we'll see you back here Wednesday at 4 o'clock for a live stream. Yes, this is pre-recorded, but leave your comments below still. We'll get back to you right away. But yeah, we'll see you back here Wednesday at 4 o'clock. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, okay?
Thanks, guys.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for watching our latest podcast. What'd you all think? Is there any information that we're missing? Is there anything you want us to cover? As these industries heat up, we're getting access to more and more big hosts. So let us know the questions that you want us to ask for you. As usual, smash that like button. We want this to go viral. Click on that bell for all notifications for the latest interviews that we're doing. And as usual, let's build this community. Subscribe to our channel because we appreciate it, because we wouldn't be here without you. Thanks for watching, everyone.